Hi, it's Loren Lockman from the Tanglewood Wellness Center. I've been asked to talk a little bit about eating fruit after fasting, where we will sometimes see, we have somebody here that brought this up because we had blood sugar on the 5th or 6th day of refeeding, a little higher than normal. Not terribly out of range. A normal range, healthy range, according to the American Medical Association, is between 70 and 100. Her blood sugar was 118. Up until a few years ago, the normal range actually went from 70 to 110. So we're talking about 8 points outside of what was considered a healthy blood sugar. And I would be willing to bet anything that there are probably, in the U.S., millions of people walking around with blood sugar higher than 118 all the time that don't realize there's an issue. But the question was, well, if we're designed to eat fruit, and most fruit has a relatively low glycemic load, and has this fiber to slow down the absorption, which is one of the reasons it has a low glycemic load, why would we see higher than normal blood sugar? What's going on there? And I think the answer is probably twofold. First of all, who knows what type 2 diabetes is all about? Anyone familiar with that? Type 1 diabetes, as you may recall, is called insulin-dependent diabetes. This is where someone needs to take insulin because their body is not producing enough insulin to meet its own needs. And so blood sugar goes high because insulin is a hormone the body manufactures in the pancreas to bring blood sugar down to healthy range. Well, if the body's not making enough insulin, then we have a problem. That's type 1 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is often called insulin-resistant diabetes, where the body's manufacturing insulin, but the body becomes resistant to its own insulin. And as a result of this, it's not doing the job. So we see blood sugar going too high, not because there's not enough insulin present, it's simply not working. My guess is that what's happening with a situation like yours, where we sometimes see this, is that as the body is still cleaning the garbage out of the bloodstream, much like someone who's obese, because usually type 2 diabetes has an over 90% correlation to obesity. Usually with most type 2 diabetics, if they simply lose the excess weight, there's no more problem. The body's no longer insulin resistant. So there's something going on in an overweight system that the body's resistant to the insulin. And I think the same thing is often happening in someone who's just completed a long fast, has a lot of garbage still in the bloodstream. There's some resistance there. And the other thing that sometimes happens, and this isn't necessarily your case, but I believe sometimes where people have not been eating much fruit, the system may simply not be very adept, even though it's what we're designed for. If you've spent 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years living primarily on not fruit, then your body might not be very good at dealing with that sugar, even though it's what we're supposed to be doing. And it may take a little while. So in almost every case, we see this correct itself pretty quickly. We did not check. We saw this reading yesterday. I opted to not check it today. Now, if it had been 180, we definitely would have checked it today. But because 118 is really not a big deal, we didn't even check it today. We will check it tomorrow. I told her this morning, we'll check it tomorrow. We'll see what happens. And it could go up a little bit, but chances are good it will go down. It probably will have gone down. And it may have been a little higher because we hadn't checked it in a week. So it might have been a little higher sooner. But we'll see what happens. Chances are very good that it will go down. And by the time you leave here in 5 days or so, it will definitely be lower than it was yesterday. The body will take care of it. It sometimes simply needs a little bit of help. Now, where I've occasionally seen people that the system seemed a little sluggish at first, a little trouble, what we would do, and so if you're at home and you're dealing with a situation where you eat fruit and you seem to get a negative reaction, you feel jittery, if you have the ability to check your blood sugar, you might see when that happens that your blood sugar is a bit high. That's probably why you're feeling some of those things. What I'll do in that situation is I'll give you lettuce with your fruit. Now, it doesn't work with melon. If you're eating watermelon or cantaloupe, you can't have lettuce with that. It's a terrible combination. It doesn't digest well. But with any other fruit, you can eat lettuce. So with papaya, with mangoes, with tomatoes, obviously, with anything else you might be eating, we can simply add some lettuce into the equation. And that usually eliminates the problem right away. Why would that happen? Well, because we've added something on top of the fruit that adds fiber, it adds water, it adds a couple of calories, not many, but doesn't add any additional sugar. And so it tends to slow down the absorption of sugar even further into the body and give the body more of an opportunity to deal with whatever might be currently present. So that typically resolves it. And that's why I believe we tend to see this sometimes. Usually nothing to worry about, something simply to pay attention to. And it's important to understand, of course, what is and is not problematic. It reminds me of a story I don't think I've shared with you guys. I apologize if I have, but it's another blood sugar issue. It was, about a year, a little more than a year. It wasn't here, so more than a year ago, here in Costa Rica. I had a group of people fasting. We had someone whose blood sugar had no blood sugar issues before. We checked the blood sugar one day, and it was 42. Okay, 42, roughly. And remember, the normal range goes between 70 and 100. So 42 is considered very low. And at the time, we had a nurse fasting with us. She was a licensed practical nurse, a registered nurse, working at a hospital in New York City. And I said to the client, when we got his blood sugar, and I said, okay, this is very low. I'm gonna keep watching this. We're gonna check this again later on today, and maybe again tonight, and then we'll check it tomorrow. We're gonna pay close attention. And then I moved on to the next person. She said, hang on. The nurse spoke up and said, hang on. What are you gonna do about this? And I said, we're not gonna do anything. Well, what do you mean? I said, we're gonna pay attention. Because one of the things I've learned in the nearly 18 years I have of professionally supervising fasts and fasting dozens of times myself is that in most cases, the body will take care of what it needs to take care of. We just need to pay attention. In fact, we saw the same thing, Rita, with your situation today, where you had something challenging going on. The body took care of itself. It kind of resolved itself. So I said to her, we're not going to do anything. And she said, well, if he was in the hospital, we would give him Coca-Cola with extra sugar to get his sugar up as quickly as possible. I said, well, I promise you, we're not going to be doing that. Okay? No Coca-Cola on site. We're not giving anyone processed sugar ever. If I had my way, nobody would ever consume processed sugar. This is poison. But this is a typical medical procedure to get blood sugar up. Because they're managing symptoms. Doctors are always about managing symptoms. What we're about here is intelligently paying attention and staying out of the body's way and allowing the body to do what it needs to do. So, with 42, there's a cause for concern and a cause to pay close attention. With 118, there's no cause for concern. We don't necessarily have to pay close attention. We will check it. We'll check it again tomorrow. If it's high again tomorrow, we'll check it again in another couple days. We're going to pay attention, but I promise you that by the time you're finished here, your blood sugar will be perfectly fine, and your body will be able to do what it needs to do. I've never had a situation where anyone needed to eat lettuce with their fruit for more than about a week before the body was able to handle even pineapple and mangoes and things like that. No problem. Okay, so I hope that's helpful and useful. Any questions? Anybody here? No? Hope that was helpful.